Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you are very welcome to our second Cultural Night event here at Bray Literary Festival, with huge thanks to Wicklow County Council, as always, for making this happen. I am delighted to introduce tonight's event. We have four poets that walk into a bar with Anne Tannon, Mark Ward, Fiona Bolger, and Grace Valence. But before that, we are going to hear some music from the wonderful Byrne. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit of information about Byrne before she starts playing her tunes. So singer, songwriter, guitarist, and poet Byrne calls her stuff rock, an eloquent mix of folk, punk angst, rock and roll, feminism, ire, laughter, and irrepressible spirit. Raw and uplifting, she takes to the stage with a fiery presence, offering a heady mix of emotion and rebellion. To date, Byrne has recorded 3 albums and an EP, which was released in Nashville in 2019. She is also the founder of the critically acclaimed Estrogen Rising, a rebel cabaret. If you'd like to find out more about Byrne, you can take a look at her website, byrnemusic.ie. So please give a big warm welcome at home for Byrne.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So 4 poets walk into a bar, right? So look who's playing in the corner. The yellow folk singer in Mexico. And they were really angels on the sidewalk. Let's show them the rest of it. Angels on the sidewalk. It was in the law. Ladies driving Cadillacs, families without cars. Immigrants who work the fields all day for a dime. Yeah, I'm just traveling through, having a good time. Yeah, I'm just traveling through. See inequality everywhere I go, and then women struggling for living life. Singing dear old Ireland, oh, about Mexico. Different story, different day, the same day. Angels on the sidewalk, devils in the bar. Chubby children licking ice cream cones while others starve. Royalty in the finery, workers dressed in rags. Me, I'm just traveling through, empty in my bags. Me, I'm just traveling through, filling up my bags. See inequality everywhere I go, and women struggling for saving dear old Ireland, oh, Baja, Mexico. Country, different language, the same page. Different story, different day, the same Angels on the sidewalk, devils in the bar. What are these things? Keep us from harm. Very much. Welcome everybody in Dublin, in Ireland, all over the world. Who knows who's tonight, so welcome. My second song is also written in Mexico. Just recently I was over there and I was locked down there, so this is a song called I'm a Warrior Woman from Ghana. And I had the idea before I left, just kind of the idea of it, and I just wrote it when I was there. Kind of a bit of a cross between a spoken word and a song. I'm a warrior, woman from the county Clare. Don't put me down, I'll pull my hair. If you try, I'll poke you in the eye and send you on your way. Oh. I'm a warrior, woman from the 3 Mile Road. A place well known for stories told. Sit by the fire, sing our song, drink the ish all night long. Ooh, dancing is a thing that we love to do. Grab your partner, 1 and 2. Let me meditate to some breakthrough. Songbird, this morning. I'm a warrior woman. I'm a warrior woman from the county Clare, where me father Jim was rare. Far by the side of the road said he was a place I had to play. I'm a warrior woman from this tune barn and sang and song in the roadside tower to my father's picture on the wall from way back when he was small. Oh, that is the thing that we love to do. Have your partner 1 and 2. Let me have the kiss to some breakthrough. It's morning. The sun shines this morning into yeah. I'm a warrior woman. I'm a warrior woman. Yeah, where I met Paul's and Kelly's drug goes living there, drumming and shaking her hair. I'm a warrior woman from Lister Barn and didn't go with me her children should be out on the power is living there, drowning pups and going spare. Oh, that is the thing that we love to do. Grab your partner 1 and 2. Let me meditate to some breakthrough. Songbird, it's morning. Yeah. Nancy and Monica came from there. 11 up, side by side up in London town, the Lower East Side, Australia. Harold, Pat and Tom didn't go. Oh, that is the thing that they love to do. Have your partner 1 and 2. Let me ready to do some breakthrough. This morning, the sun shines this morning. Yeah. I'm a warrior woman. I'm a warrior woman from the county Clare. Don't put me down, I'll hold my hand and try. I'll poke you in the eye and send you on your way. Oh. Now, obviously, you probably gathered from that my father knew the family are from Clare. I do have a passion for it. Just going to finish up this section of my performance with a song that I wrote in National Tennessee last year. I started it there and I finished it in Mexico. I was there last year too. And it's my impression of the bars on board. It's called Behind Swinging Doors. And parties, drunk grandmas, old maids, farmhands, widows and bachelors, outlaws and gun-toting banners behind swinging doors. Now Mary learned to shoot a gun when she was only 5, and adding her riding on the range. Behind of all the old tin cans, would destroy her hand. Now she worked every day. And parties, drunk grandmas, old maids, farmhands, and whores, goes back to this outdoors and I'm totally battlefield. Yeah. After still never married, she liked to support too. Some thought her to lesbian, probably was true. My grandma left that farm to go. She was standing, broke things to the bone and they never loved again. Oh, Maria, the madam, she came from Wyoming. She rode in on a horse called Lily May. She opened her heart beside me, oh, heart proud for the night in the winter. What's it say? It said, beautiful weather, I wanted with it. Bourbon, cornbread, swine. They came out of the dusty hills from desperation and for thrills. That's where some of them died. And the party from grandma's old man, mom and horse. Statues, outlaws, and gunpowder matters because we're bored. Yeah. Now grandma went to Broadway to down home Papa Tom, looking for a cowboy before she popped her club. But the outlaw at the bar trying to run his scout. And old grandma's favorite eyes soon became around. Yeah. And parties from grandma's old man, mom and horse. Saddles and not turning back behind swinging doors. Sure, we're all behind swinging doors. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful girl. I did say she was fiery and feisty, and she proved me 100% correct. Well done, girl. Fantastic new songs.
Thank you.
Lockdown in Mexico wasn't all that bad, was it? Yeah. Well, it's certainly something good came out of it. Yeah, sure. Okay, it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our 4 poets. Unfortunately, they don't have their pints of Guinness tonight. These are the times we're living in. What can we do? But we'll pretend we're in a bar with their spoons. Yeah. So I'm going to start on my left because this is the lady who has coordinated tonight's event. This is Anne Tanham. So Anne has published 2 poetry collections, Take This Life and Tides Shifting Across My Sitting Room Floor, with her 3rd collection, 26 Letters of a New Alphabet, forthcoming from Salmon. Anne runs writers' coaching clinics and workshops and is co-founder of the weekly Dublin Writers' Forum. Next to Anne, we have Fiona Bolger. Fiona's first collection was published in 2019 by Yoda Press Delhi, A Compound of Words. Her grimoire, The Geometry of Love Between the Elements, was published by Phoebe Press in 2013. She completed her MA in creative writing in 2011 and is currently a PhD candidate in DCU School of English. For 11 years, she worked with Anne Tanham, facilitating Dublin Writers' Forum. Here we have Mark Ward. Mark is the author of 2 chapbooks, Circumference and Carcass. His poems have featured in the Irish Times, Poetry Ireland Review, Banshee, among others. He is the founding editor of Impossible Archetype, a journal of LGBTQ poetry, and the collection Nightlight is forthcoming from Salmon in 2022. And last but certainly not least, we have Grace Valence. Grace is the author of Holding Distance. Her poems have appeared in journals including Poetry Ireland Review, Ciphers, the Seneca Review, the American Poetry Journal, Magma, the Harvard Advocate, and the Irish Times. She is a recent recipient of the Literature Bursary from the Arts Council of Ireland. Grace has taught creative writing at UCD and in diverse community settings. So ladies and gents, I am now going to hand you over into the very capable hands of the lovely Anne Tannen.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Lovely talent. On the kids. Let that echo in the room. So what we did was, rather than us coming along and just kind of reading our poems, we met twice online and we talked about the themes maybe that were coming up in our poetry, and we invited each other to respond to poems that we were sharing with each other. And this is the result of that. So we're really happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the next poetry while. So I'm going to start the ball rolling. One of the things that was coming up for me was that thing around our place in the world and that sense of where we belong. So this poem is called Role Models. Referring to it as the job. Dad first, then my eldest brother would leave the house, head out to bandit country, where the lads at work, a self-sufficient tribe of rebels, ruled their world from 8 to 5, far from the reach of bosses and wives. Crack in the depot, waiting for the work orders to be handed down. The skiving off to football matches. The slagging in the canteen. A mug screwed carefully to the table. Its owner's priceless face when he tried to lift it. The lads killing themselves laughing. I wanted that life, never the views in the kitchen.
Thank you for that, Anne. So, as Anne was saying, these are all responses. So, a lot of the poems that I've put later are kind of responses that have been already written. This is something that was entirely new. I was waiting outside the road and I had read Anne's poem earlier. It was ringing in my head, so this poem is a direct response, and actually directly to Anne, and it's called Tidy.
Hang on, a little bit louder.
Speak up, louder.
Speak up.
Okay.
Speak up, Mom. Speak up.
Step forward, I'll speak up. Tidy. And the workmen don't look happy sweeping up. No one has had lunch, not with the loose gravel small hills spilling into the road. One man, older than you'd think, mid-50s, drives the digger effortlessly, its claw reaching, a dancer's arc, whilst the cab moves clear of traffic. The other man follows after, brush in hand. And from the kitchen, you watched your men go each day to work with their hands. I stand waiting, my hands not having lifted more than a box of books I have swept up, spot mopped supermarket floors, but I write this because I can't lift the world and move it like they can.
Thank you, Mark. I was thinking about Anne's poem and feeling a bit trapped in the domestic. I was reflecting that we all feel a bit trapped in the domestic sphere these days. Like it or not, COVID has circumscribed our lives in ways in which we couldn't have anticipated. So something I've really been focusing on is finding the beauty in living a bit smaller, and finding the willingness moments in the smallest sort of exchanges in the home. So this is a poem, very simple, about doodling with my father when I was a child. So this poem is called Doodles. A picture of time wasted. He between reading the paper and not reading it. Me inspecting my foot. Picking up the crushed gold foil of the Hershey's bar we finished. Unscrunching it, smoothing the lines of the white inner wrap, chocolate smudge, still smelling like vanilla. I draw a stick figure. He folds the newspaper, sets it aside and draws a dog. I fill in the jagged shape of its bark. The corner of our page is wooded by a coffee ring, and the sprawling damp becomes the contour of a spider's web. I trace it out. He draws a book. Now we are leaning further over the kitchen table. I practice my signature in rows on page. P initials below. Then a rabbit, then a cube, a ladybug, the words, I love you. A a pencil, a chocolate bar, less one neat plate, a pig, a heart, then squiggles, a tornado, curly cues. The line is the line. Sometimes it runs without stopping. It's a different line every step.
Thank you so much. Such a beautiful poem. So when I read Grace's poem, Doodles, it really brought home to me the importance of honouring those small moments, and particularly between a parent and child. And there was a mention of chocolate, which is always a great thing in a poem. I mean, every poem really should have a mention of chocolate, but it's also a mention of a dog in it. And so it reminded me of a poem, and this is about parents and the child is me as an adult. And it was when my mother was dying of leukemia. And even though it was a very difficult time, there were also incredible moments of joy there as well. So this poem is called Reframe. I head over to visit you. You spent the night in hospital. Platelets so low, you bled just for the heck of it. We don't panic anymore, do we, you and I? Like in the beginning when the sight of runaway blood prompted illegal U-turns. Racing back to St. James's Hospital. Stay calm, keep pressure on it. I head over to visit you. Sammy the dog has eaten your bottom teeth. Tired of chocolates still in their wrappers, pincushions, hearing aids, and rubbish from the bin, he was tempted by your teeth instead. And you are left with half a smile and someone else's blood inside you, coursing through your stubborn veins. That silly dog, lying on the couch, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. And we are all laughing, you, me, and Dad. And I'm wondering, is this as far from dying as we can hope to be?
Thanks for that. In regards to Doodles, what came into me initially was the artistical, and I have written a poem about an artist and their life model. So that's what came out to me. But it's a very different relationship, and it's very much a relationship between Alec and Lynn, and it's called Her Gaze. Her gaze removes the singular journey she has made. The Borgia map, her town overlays his city. In his studio, cluttered, louche, she sees children run underfoot through failed painting, first sketches. He can't see the ghost, but she's not sure they are ghosts. She might be. Elsewhere, he asks if she can remain still, poised to capture her flush of scorn. He surrounds her with her boredom. Uninterested in being a subject, she's perfect. She sits for the whole hour he pays her. She doesn't look at the picture.
Thank you for that, Mark. Wonderful poetry here. So what struck me about Grace's doodle poem was the various different images that herself and her father were doodling. And I was trying to think of an instance where I had been thinking about lots of different images, and I thought about a box, an old box from a Sumit Mixie, which is kind of like a food processor. And Sumit was this really old Chennai brand. Everybody in Tamil Nadu had a Sumit Mixie. And they don't make them anymore, sadly, but there's lots still running. So this Sumit Mixie box was empty, and I had filled it with all the old photos that myself and my friend had. So this is a poem about those photos. A Sumit Mixie box full of photos. It's time to leave our home, the wardrobe packed full of photographs. Mountains you climbed in Polish miners' boots, soles later ripped off and replaced. Deserts where we slept under holy moons, heard of a birth far away. Days by the sea, building sand temples, fully dressed, splashing in waves. And then our wedding album. 3 days of joining together, bound so tight we felt choked, and when I struggled to be free, you held on tighter. The mixie is still working, but not for me. Thank you so much, Fiona. So thinking a little bit about Fiona's poem, which is both kind of a departure, as well as centers on the image and these photographs. I have a poem called Last Look, which is about the last time I ever saw the apartment that I grew up in. And I entered the poem through a photograph of actually kind of like a heap of trash in the apartment as it was being cleared out. There was a photograph I still on. So this is Last Look. In that hidden corner of my mother's studio, behind the curve where her low drafting table faced the wall, stands the yellow ladder, wheeled from its usual place. I'd sat on its steps and played or older, looked through her references. Below it, 4 tubs of clay and 2 wheels for throwing, a plastic wash basin, a china cup without a handle, and chicken wire to scaffold a life-size work from within. 2. At her drafting table, my mother is molding wax figures. Their coral brown bodies are translucent in the light and warm from her fingertips. Laid across the table are torn pages showing a chorus wilted, a woman, a youth, all Etruscan, slender, bronze, except for the wide head of the warrior, his helmet framing a peaceful expression. 3. Seeing is like trying to make out the still stones at the bottom of a clear lake, obscured under running crowds. I point the viewfinder and take the picture.
Thank you so much, Grace. So one of the things that was coming up for me in my work was negotiating or trying to navigate debt and how much we negotiate around it. And in literature and in all of art, there are so many examples of us trying to, I suppose, engage with death and make deals, and they never go right. So this poem is called Asking the Impossible. Orpheus, heartbroken, descends into the underworld to bring his beloved Eurydice back. Mothers lean over cots where changelings lie, their soft breathing babies sleeping beneath fairy hills. Dreams where fathers, back from their own funeral, ring the front door bell, while the living stand in the hall, caught between hope and the knowledge that come morning they'll have to reopen wounds, scatter earth again. I remember thinking in the days before you died, I might ask you to stay a while longer. When the time came, such a request proved impossible, with you pulling away and me watching you leave.
Thank you so much, Anne. Anne's whole book is a beautiful study of grief and the lessons learned from it. I'm thinking about Anne's poem. I was reflecting on wanting somebody to stay longer than is natural. And so this poem is about dreaming of my mother who I lost when I was 18. But I think it's also in the tradition of, I believe, it's called an ashling, a poem about something that comes to you from a dream and then is gone just as quickly. So this is the iguana dreams of its mother. Lazy, I slept through the lunar eclipse and dreamt of my mother. She has visited me only twice, in some Midwestern supermarket, and again in the stall of a Bangkok street merchant. Each time the feeling was fuller than a phantom memory, or I think I have my heart on. Before the backward fall of waking, where the strings of grief catch me and make me moan. I have lived through 2 eclipses, saw one on the beach with my mother, missed one in a dream with her tea. So I was struck by Anne's use of Eurydice and Orpheus. And I thought, do I have a poem which has some mythological references? And so I thought I would just say that. And this poem is an extract from a longer piece, and I call the longer piece a lattice of words because I was interested in how poetry is composed of lines, and yet so is spiders' webs and lattices, and you can catch things. And even nets are also composed of lines. So this idea of lines. Penelope is weaving a shroud. A fishwife crochets nets. A naked woman dives for pearls, a web of looms. Catching sunlight in the dew, delicate fingerwork, frail beauty for entrapment, survival, tap gently in the spider piece.
Thank you for that, Fiona. Like yourself, I have responded to Anne's myth, and also quite shockingly, her use of text, which was correlated. I have been writing a sequence of poems as of writing that. I can't pass away, and the other poem in the sequence, if you were on it earlier and watching the short list of poems, was part of that sequence. So that was this is called Supplement, and it reimagines my cat as Egyptian cat. Mafdet stalks the chamber. The snake she preys upon escapes. She returns to her praise, curled at his feet, a century. She's a god that thinks there's something in this praise, giving oneself to an invocation. She imitates the way the humans pray, their fingers interlace, their eyes close in awe. Behind this lid, bejeweled in gold and praise, a mortal body decays. The pharaoh tempered her, perceiving the need to praise those who worship him and her. He would explain their confusing requests and prayers. Please make me rich, please let her love me back. Such petty concerns displayed by the prey, the playthings. He stopped at 2, amusing her himself. Even gods can love, can praise, but a mortal body decays. Gods have been too long removed from direct praise. Another snake savors him. She left it, leaves him in search of worship to a praise.
This poem that I'm going to read now is actually in response to the poem that will come after, which Grace is going to read. Just come to confuse you. See if you're really awake and listening to us. So this poem is responding to the use of images of another place, a place which is slightly foreign but becomes familiar through scent, through smell, through touch, through taste. And so when Grace had all those in her poem, I was thinking, which poem of mine has all of that? And I thought this one did. This is called View Through the Crack. I want to part myself, crack open and reveal Kanchenjunga in the morning sun, top slip in dappled green midday light, Bay of Bengal, moon path out to sea. Mounds of colored beads on white tarpaulin, sacks of sorted waste outside red brick houses, children dancing in overflowing water, hot sambar and soft rice with melting ghee. Hira halwai's earthen pot of gulab jamun, warm, sticky and sweet. Thick, creamy curd, or hospit Rajasthani poa with whole black. But I'm afraid how to push the images back in and seal the crack. My mouth waters, I swallow, keep it in, hold it. Thank you, Fiona, that's such a beautiful, sensual poem. The poem I'm going to read to you now is also kind of deals with heightened senses, heightened for a good reason, that bring you into the present through their experience. And the title of the poem is called A Year with Two Springs. And what it refers to is the first year that I met my partner, where we live in, we're from different hemispheres. So in him coming to visit me in Europe and myself visiting him in South America, we both experienced a year where we had two springs. Equilibrium returned through kissing and the taste of courgette. I had a kind of sixth sense for when the rice was done, knew where to find things. Half an onion, coarse salt, the joint you set down and couldn't find again. After we had eaten, you asked if I think there's a meaning to the way fork and knife are left on the plate after the meal is finished. And I laughed at the thought of meaning coded in cutlery and delft. Hours before, when the locksmith led us back into the house, you relit a candle standing upright on the marble countertop, insisted on letting it burn down to a little irregular disc. Later, moving to clean up half of manna on the windowsill, I saw how it related to 6 grapes beside the last beer poured into a glass and fizzing golden. You mind drawing a still life of it, impersonating yourself in art school, one eye closed and tracing that invisible distance between eye and offering. And so we moved through to a new feeling. The night before, on our way to market, skirting the wide and seemingly endless beach, we handed over all we carried to 2 young men who stopped us with a gun. It took hours to find a hostel. Shelter came by way of a night receptionist who grinned a toothy grin, exclaimed, "You're both so tall," before giving us credit and a key. It was a place firstly to dry off, a bar of soap, a towel, and a toothbrush all were gifts. Outside, a palm cast its shadow on the window's white shade, making a picture above our bed. It was the only night we didn't get a single mosquito bite. Our blood is sugar. And when I slept, I dreamt of repeating the words, "Please don't hurt him," while my rucksack floated from my shoulders in the disappearing rain, then woke to you feeling for the calluses on my fingertips, smiling, saying, "From where you hold the pen."
Thank you for that. I look back on, and I think my abiding memory of this whole experience was you saying, "You're not so tall." I just love the way you say it. Weirdly, a link that just occurred to me after reading it is this poem is about being a child and being small and scared. It's coming from the news book I've been writing. It's about house and home and different approaches. I have ghost haunted houses. I have guided tours in houses and all kinds of different things. This is a little ghost story / memory from childhood, and it's called Sleep Up. Newly married, the starter home sat at the mouth of the cul-de-sac, waiting. Impossible to light, days would try to flood its corners which resisted illumination. Darkness slowly moving in. Stairs that night I would have to climb loomed into flame, making themselves known. Skin prickled taut with whispers. Something died here. The childless air disrupted lurches into evil. I am 9, but my survival instinct kicks in. I scurry past the roses, snaking down the wall, out the gate, see the sky darkening around it. The ravenous house hisses. This is where the two of you will live for a few months. And everything.
Thanks, Mark. I love that poem, really do. So one of the things that Mark had brought was the idea of home and house, and it's something that really resonates with me. And that poem, the idea of kind of a couple starting out in their life, brought me to this, to my poem now. And then even Fiona's poem with all that food, every time Fiona reads that poem, I'm like, give me some food. I love it. So this poem is called Picking Figs, which can bring these two things together. She rings me in the early evening, my firstborn lately flown the nest, to tell me they've been picking figs from trees growing on his father's land. She tells me of their plans to make fig jam. Make fig jam. I let the phrase settle in my ear, say it to myself to taste it on my tongue. Close my eyes, see a table set for breakfast, the winter Spanish sun still warm across the walls and tiles, the two of them sitting in easy silence, one finishing the last of freshly squeezed orange juice, the other spreading fig jam on crusty bread. Days of such mornings behind them, days of such mornings ahead.
What struck me about Mark's poem was the darkness and the light, and he used the word illumination. I think he used the illumination. Yes, right. And that word really resonated with me. That's the right metaphor. You can see metaphors here like anything. What the hell?
We're poets, we can do these things. Mess with metaphor.
Yeah, totally mess with my metaphors. So I wrote this poem because I always write longhand with a pen, preferably ink pen. I know it sounds really pretentious. On paper, generally the backs of bits of paper. And I have a particular desk, and the sun shines in on my desk in the morning. So I was thinking about people who had also written on paper over the decades and generations, and I was thinking about the illuminated manuscripts and the darkness and the light and the contrasts. And I think this is how it kind of resonates. Illuminated manuscript. Sunshine on the page, the pen's shadow following the words joined at the nib. Intricate images woven into the words on the dead skin page. Tattoo on vellum. When the flesh has been consumed, has rotted back to earth, the stained hide remains. Words shedding light, and in the margins, the unspoken escapes unseen.
Thank you for that beautiful response.
Mark, I'm just going to check if it's okay. So it's 7:20, is that right?
It's now 8:15.
Oh, so 8:15.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh,
you're
you're
at 5
absolutely
minutes.
fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Absolutely
Okay.
fine.
I didn't want anybody panicking, and then you know what Tanya gets like. She can throw us out.
We're well timed, don't worry. So what I responded to in that was the unspoken margins of the Fiona's home, and this is more from the house at home. In this case, it's kind of the opposite of starter home. It's a renovation, and that's the title of the poem. Renovation. Oh, and this is the last one for me, so thank you to Aaron for having me. Thank you to Radio Festival. Renovation. The builder holds the love panel, this one unswung, despite our debris sculpting everything. He invites you to speak, passing its barely tolerable weight, inviting a swim, all knowing that what's half broken needs demolishing. Each blow reduces the chance to hide. Light funnels through and subsides us. The sea breeze airs out the fading room, whispering, we can listen, or we can live here. We hold hands. and the wall collapses. We welcome the concrete's temporary cuts, knowing they will become our rock garden and alter the process. And what's left? The rubble. We let the sea wash clean.
Mark. So this is also my last one, so I want to thank Bray Literary Festival and Tanya, the incarnation of Bray Literary Festival here tonight, for organising all of this. It's been wonderful to hear Vern, and I've forgotten how much I love to hear Vern live. It's just such a treat, and I hope you've all enjoyed. And it's been so lovely to be here with Mark and with Grace and Anne, and yeah, it's so long since I've sat with people and read poetry in person, and it's just been really wonderful. I'm going to go, so I'll just shut up. So the connection here is Mark talked about rubble, and I thought about cement, and this is the view from my friend Lakshmi's balcony in Chennai on East Coast Road, and I can show you where it is, but that would be breaking GDPR, so I won't. But basically, my home is also Chennai. So Shivani Apartments, I miss you so much. Domestic scene. Cement bags hang in the tree. A mound of rubble hides behind the wall. That's the chirping of chipmunks, and the noise of the traffic is building up fast. But if I close my eyes, I see the white on black flicker of a butterfly. Oh.
So much for And my last poem of the evening is responding to Mark's renovation and the idea that sometimes we've got to break things down in order to build it back up again. And thank you so much to Bray Literary Festival and especially to Tanya, who's just such a powerhouse. Yeah. So wonderful, my wonderful. Powerhouse woman. We had such fun, and it was such a privilege to read with these three gorgeous people. So my poem is called Rise. Dare we let go of all the things we lost in the fire? You are still breathing. I am still breathing. The lighthouse still stands at the far end of our south wall. And just today on the canal, 20 swans or more took sudden flight, their wings low and heavy, gathering speed over startled waters. Passers-by stopped in their tracks, mesmerized, and for one weightless moment, forgot they couldn't fly.
Thank you so much, Anne. So I'll be reading the last poem of the evening. Just to say a massive thank you to Anne for bringing us all together. Thank you to my fellow poets for just such a beautiful process of reading each other's work and connecting. And thank you so much to the Bray Literary Festival and of course Tanya. It's just such a beautiful thing to be able to do in the middle of challenging times, and we hope you've all enjoyed it as much as we have. So this last poem is thinking about Mark's poem and how a space of destruction can actually be really quite fertile for creation. And also Anne's looking at the natural world, the world around you, letting it take you into whatever difficult circumstance you're in. So I wrote this when I lost my job, didn't quite know where I was going. And I used to go into Dublin's parks where I feel like I just set foot in Stephen's Green and I feel like I'm in this public and everyone. So this poem's actually set in a garden. You'll probably recognize it from some of the descriptions. This is all yours. And I should say it was written at a time where I found it really enjoyable to be alone, before we were all isolated. All yours. Everyone in this city must be at work. I should be at work too, but I'm not. I can't see the warden, so the dog runs free, racing wide circles on the lush green of a sunken lawn framed by stone steps. The sun has just come out, hazy, it breaks through gaps in the trees. Beside the fountain, a circle of young men are unzipping their teal delivery jackets and passing a joint. Beyond them, the caretaker pushes his wheelie boom, while pigeons trail like school children, almost in rows, devoted to him, to his pocket full of rich tea crumbs. Distantly, the waterfall pulses over rockery. The unkempt rosarium's benches are empty, and the clipped yew maze enclosed by office blocks are, for this bright hour, hours and hours alone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'll hand it over to Roberto Berger.
Hash W.
Oh,
Hash W. These were all amazing. Well, I just want to say that Grace was talking about Ashley, and I was like, that's a complete I'm gonna go. They're poets, you know. Probably not in touch with popular culture. I mean, one moment I'm lying, very tired. Joke. That was absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to end the night with a few songs for you. I'm going to do one of my favorite songs, which is actually the second song I ever wrote. The first song really has never seen the light of day because the second one, I don't know how that happened. Called Cowgirl. So I am actually taking some of the old work out, and I never really put this one away, but it's about leaving home. Daddy says life's changing. Mama said she had a broken heart. And I told them I was aching. Get away and leave this heart. Mother said that I was mean. Sister said get out while you can. Really don't want to end up like me. You're the hardest thing, man. If you know it, join it. I don't want to be a cowgirl. I don't want to work hard. Married young, have children and be done. No, city's calling. While that COVID money mama gave me, oh, hello, what about the days? When I saw the lights once for me, and I knew I had found my way. So I struggled for a while to find employment. Struggled for a while to find a friend. In the city of bright lights, yeah, I will manage in the end. I don't want to be a cowgirl. I don't want to work hard. Married young, have children and be done. Oh, city's calling. So I start my job on Monday morning, thinking how to fit in cups to go. And in the evening in my empty room, I sit and play guitar. I know where my life is going to go. And the only thing that really is important is that I'm free and that I got away. But sometimes take the bus, go back to home, you. It all stay. I don't want to be a hacker. I don't want to work hard. I'm young, have children that be done. Oh. And then I go, oh! Anyway, so this is a song called Commodity, which I wrote about 10 years ago. I just put it back in my set list, and I think it's more pertinent today than it ever was. This is a punk frog. Oh, here I go talking again. I just wanna be a commodity. No, 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 no. Oh, I will not be bought and sold. Oh, I will not do as I'm told. I will not say yes when I mean no. I will not say stop when I mean go away. The police are breathing down my neck. Says I have to wear I will not say I am for your band. I will not say I am one of them or one of us. Oh yeah. No, I've always had a fancy smash guitar, and I better get a move on. I have loads of old guitars at home now. I've got one that I can. I'm gonna do it one of these. I like smashing. It will be smashing, but I'll wait till coronavirus.
Please do
It's
it at
about
our
seeing.
events.
What?
Please do it at one of our events. I don't want to miss this.
Herman smashes guitar at Bray Literary Festival.
Somehow I'm not good.
Although it actually would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you to Fiona, Mark, and Grace, and everybody else there. A song called Go. If you know what you're doing, please. Back traveling, and I suppose the whole armchair travel. Here I go again, on the road again, and so down, don't hold you now. There's so much adventures in Italy, you know. But if you love what I really mean to say, Patty Smith and Grace. I've never been to Brazil, Chile or Peru. Never always blind outside of the zoo. Never ran with people like Ernest Hemingway or laughed with hyenas in Zimbabwe. Here I go again. Never been to Mallorca. I once admired Amsterdam's peak. Never strolled in Tehran, the Persian mystery. I never walked in Palestine among the olive groves of kicked down the side. Even occupied, so I wanna go. I can get alive. Oh, I have to go on the train, plane, boat, bus, walking, crawling, imagining, going away. Here I go again. Here I go again. Love never sucked the sky in ancient Greece or Rome, or down to St. or St. Governor here at home. I've never cruised down the Boyne with either home. Flown into the sun is my favorite. Icarus or Athena, or my old friend Katrina, Josephina, Geraldina, Philomena, whoever you want. In the valley of the blue. Come on, go. Oh, I have to go. On train, plane, boat, bus, walking, running, imagining, going away. Here I go again. Here I go again. One more time. Here I go on the road again. Here I go on the road again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bern! Raceman!
Yeah!
Mark Ward! Fiona Mulligan! And Talum! And you're a wonderful audience for joining us today. And Tanya, you're wonderful. You folks at home probably are thinking we do have some sort of a bar going on. All this giggles and behaviour. I would just like to thank you so much for joining us to celebrate Bray Literary Festival's Culture Night 2020. Some of you are watching on Facebook this evening, others are watching on YouTube. I would encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to have full days of events of the weekend of 25th to 27th of September. We're very busy organising and recording those events this week. So do subscribe and you will get reminders to check in for those events. Thank you very much, everybody at home.